Yeah, what's good, Josh? Man, the Bigga P, and I'm here with my post-fight thoughts on the HBO card from last night, and also the UniMas card that was after that. First of all three fights that I watched last night, they were very highly entertaining fights. One of them is a true blue fight of the year candidate for this year. So I'll start off with Mike Perez versus Magomed-Abdusalamov. Um, Nothing more to say about that other than it was a bruising heavyweight fight. Usually, like I said, I mean, the usual discussion or views or opinions about the heavyweight division is that the heavyweights, I mean, the fights are not really that all that entertaining, or the champions are not all that entertaining to watch. Um, and for the most part, I mean, for the pretty much for the past, let's say maybe almost decade and a half, the heavyweight division has been really struggling in order to find an identity. Not to say that there hasn't been any great heavyweight fights. I mean, it's not like it before. It used to be like, if the top fighters got together, and then you'd expect to see some fireworks or something classic or near classic. So it's usually scattered from fight to fight. It could be very unexpected, or it could just be something that's just wildly entertaining. Now, when this fight was when I heard the Perez Abdusalamov fight first announced, I'm like, okay, there's gonna be some fireworks. Someone is getting knocked out because I had seen both of them fight. Abdusalamov I was never really high on. You know, I always thought he got hit too much, and then his power because his hands were heavy as anything were out. And my Perez was the one who actually did impress me because I always thought as long as he stayed in condition, he was a problem because I liked that he also had power and he also had really fast hands and good boxing skills. Just was really inactive. So when I heard this fight was that, I was like, I can't wait to see this fight. And this fight did not disappoint. It was a brawl from the first round on. It like the amount of shots that both of them took was unbelievable. Abdulsalam got the worst of it because, like I said, as I mentioned before, Mike Perez actually has some boxing skills. He's a product of the Cuban boxing, amateur boxing system. So where at least he could fall back, Absalom was just plodding forward and catching punches, and pretty much it led to his undoing in certain ways. Like I think he got his nose broken, he got his cheekbone busted. I think he injured his left hand, and pretty much defense was thrown to the wind. He didn't really do much to defend himself except he'd tie him up or back away. Try and it was a slugfest. It was pretty much a real slugfest that only the heavyweights can do it, and he got punished. In the 10th round, I thought he was ready to go because I think Perez landed like a stiff jab, and it was almost like electricity went through him because he did like a very herky jerky type motion. And I thought Mike was just gonna finish him in that. It was gonna finish him in that last round, and it was not to be. Mike won a very hard fought decision because Mike really took some shots himself too. In fact, there were points in the fight where I thought Mike was feeling Mago's power, and I'm thinking that that maybe he might actually wear down. He might actually wear down from those shots, but he showed an absolutely solid chin, and pretty much this fight was what like the heavyweight division needed. Just two contenders, that put on the show that get noticed because the heavyweight division it's going to be moving into a different direction very soon because I know the Klitschko's themselves. I know Vitaly's probably on the verge of retirement, which will leave Vlad, and I know Vlad's in this twilight of his career, so to speak. So I mean, pretty much once the belts are released off them, you can see I can see the heavyweight division because the heavyweight division heating up with some interesting fights. I know the aftermath of the fight. I read earlier this morning that Abdul Salamov was sent to the hospital with a small clot in his brain. I mean, you really don't want to read things like that, hear about things like that, but I mean, it's the way of the world. I mean, whereas you can have fights where technical prowess is on display, and it's beautiful. Then you have your brutal slugfest, which I also is pleasing to watch. But then just knowing that the human body is not supposed to, which take punishment of that nature repeatedly. Um, it was kind of disappointing. It was kind of sad to actually read that, it was a blood clot. But they said he's healed, and he's currently resting up in the hospital. I mean, now what does it mean for Mago's career going forward? Because before, it used to be if you get a blood clot in your brain, you're automatically retired. You're retired from the sport. Um, but now I know that's not really the case anymore. But for whatever reason, I don't really understand it. I mean, I'm definitely interested to see where Mago actually goes from here, because I know this was also the first time he went the distance too. He went past 5 and he actually went the distance, and for the most part, he didn't. I mean, granted, broken nose, busted hand, and he didn't do that bad. But if he does fight again, or if they actually let him fight again, he might want to take some defensive. He might want to sharpen up his defensive skills. I know they mentioned before he felt a kinship towards Ruslan Provodnikov, and there's a very it's good to have. I mean, the mentality, it's whatever, but there's a very difference between. I mean, there is a slight difference between the skills between Ruslan and then Abdusalamov. So, and I hope that he was actually able to come back from that fight. I mean, if anything, he'll make for entertaining fights on the way, and who knows? I mean, we may even see him in that heavyweight championship fight probably within the next 5 years if he lasts. As for Mike Perez, I've been high on him, and I've been hoping for him to get this opportunity. And with a fight like this, I would love to see him, put him in the ring with Deontay Wilder or somebody, or Bryant Jennings, or Malik Scott, or someone, another of these young heavyweights. I would love to see him in another fight like that, because like I said, he's entertaining. The only minor thing for him is he just wanted to get his weight down a little bit more. Um, I'm always a fan of old school heavyweights that were optimal. That like bulk was. I mean, bulk is a hindrance, so you try to drain as much as possible. Try to be as optimal, as lean as possible. But and I know he did lose a lot of weight, but I feel that he'll be more optimal, more dangerous. If he just drops a couple more, like maybe about 10, 15 more pounds. So yeah, that brings us to our the main event of the HBO card. That'll be Triple G versus Curtis Stevens. Now, when this fight was announced, I was well. I'll say this. I mean, the fight didn't really grab my interest at first, only because not because of anything of Triple G though, but because of Curtis Stevens. Now I've watched Curtis Stevens. I've watched many of his fights before. I've watched him underachieve, and the one fight of his I never understood how he could have lost, and this is where I probably soured on him, was his fight against Jesse Brinkley. But this is when he was at 168. And nevertheless, I know it was an eliminated fight. That's whoever was gonna win that fight would have fought Lucien Boutte, who was the IBF champ at the time. And I thought Curtis Stevens was gonna be on his way to doing it. And so it was kind of I was kind of mind blown that Jesse Brinkley actually whooped him the way he did. So pretty much after that, I know Sir Stevens fell off the radar, and he fell off my radar. And I know he came back and he'd been scoring some KOs over limited competition. In his last fight, he knocked out Saul Roman within a round or two. And I guess that's where the excitement going, because the middleweights division is becoming very interesting. So I know in this fight, it's like, oh yes, we're going to have a slugfest. Someone with power, someone who's actually a middleweight, who could trouble Triple G. So I mean, as the weeks went on, I got more into the fight, and I anticipated a little bit more. And I still thought Curtis Stevens would get knocked out. I thought he would get knocked out within three, and that's the one thing he actually did surprise me. He actually lasted more than three. Triple G in the fight, he fought very tentatively at first, only because I think Triple G knew that he was fighting a man who had the power to to if he got countered to actually really hurt him or actually knock him down or out. So he fought really tentatively at first. I think the first couple rounds were very tentative, and then it was in the third round too, where where Triple G scores the first knockdown on Curtis Stevens, and you see Stevens' face, like his eyes were just like he couldn't believe what he got hit with. And I think that fight did. I think that fight took a little steam out of Stevens, out of his at least the offensive steam out of that, because he realized that he just got hit with some shit that that he never got he never felt before. So the fight progressed. Triple G was cutting off the ring on him, and Stevens was doing his part like to counter him, but but like I said, he was just a little bit too limited defensively to do what he needed to do, because he couldn't jab with Triple G because he didn't have the reach to do it. However, what he was doing at points in the fight to actually score points and actually able to stagger him a couple of times was Curtis Stevens does have good hand speed. And I was surprised to see Triple G actually really bothered by hand speed. And this is hand speed, of course, from a heavy hitter. So I thought it was going to get interesting. I thought, okay, maybe if Stevens can actually, maybe hit a high guard and actually walk in, at least try to walk into, or at least try to back up Triple G himself. But instead, he allowed Triple G to get him on the ropes and beat him up on the ropes, even though his corner was telling him to keep him in the middle of the ring, keep him in the center of the ring, and he wasn't doing it. So, I mean, and of course, Triple G once he got into the room, just absolutely just offensively just broke him down. Just some beautiful combinations, body head combinations. By seven, I think Stevens was just on the ropes. Like the referee was good because he was giving him all chances of the world, because he could have stopped the fight within that round. And he was yelling him to show me something, and he wasn't. Oh, he would fire back once, and he was just taking some. He was just either ducking some blows, taking blows on the ropes, and his eye was closing, really closing. And yeah, when at the end of that round, I was like, if they let him out for that round, he's probably gonna get hurt. Although I wanted to see it continue, because I was saying maybe Stevens can actually come back, but his corner is like, yeah, no, he was done for the night. Triple G, of course, rolls on. I mean, lasted longer than I expected it to last. So Triple G's, on his way, on his hype, and his interviews are hilarious to me, because I literally don't have no idea what he's talking about, because the translator translates what Max says, and then he speaks in English, broken English, and it's all over the place. I always thought it's funny. I always think that's interesting. Like the translator's telling him, but instead of actually, he actually speaks in English, and I have to give props to that. But his interviews are just so all over the place. Like, I'm pretty sure in interviews he may have been talking a little trash. I don't know, but I just thought. But there was no. But at least there wasn't anything on the level of he was a good boy, like it was in the Rosado fight. Um, And I was surprised they didn't interview Stevens, though. I thought Stevens acquitted himself well enough that I thought Max could have given him some FaceTime, let him speak his piece, unless he was just a little bit too messed up to actually talk. But yeah, Triple G rolls on, and I think they're having him fight in next February. So he's very active. He's a very active fighter. He fought 4 times this year, and I think he's fighting in Monaco or somebody. Who knows? Maybe it might be one of the other middleweight champions. But of course, the money fight in that division now, more than ever, is Triple G versus Sergio, and that's a fight that I definitely want to see by next year, because I know Sergio is, like I said, he's where he is. Like he's the top man at 160, and he's in pound for pound, but he is coming out of his physical prime. and he's right for the taking. And I want to see a proper, changing of the guard for there. So that's about it. And well, Stevens, well, after he gets a little rest, I mean, Stevens could stay at 160, and I feel that he'll probably be a good contender. Like I'm not saying that he can't, because I mean I truly believe that he could beat Quillen. I truly believe that he could beat Barker. Like he's not a gatekeeper. He's not a gatekeeper. But he could have a very a solid career at 160 if he stays there. But yeah, probably needs to sharpen up a little bit on the defense though, to at least to make up for some of the deficiencies he has, such as the reach and well, the height wasn't really much of a differential, but just mostly his reach. So yeah, and that was the HBO card, and then afterwards there was another fight that was on one of the Spanish channels, like UniMas. It was Segura versus Marquez. It was a title eliminator, I believe, and that fight was unbelievable. It was from round one. It was a slugfest. Segura. I mean, I've seen both of them fight before. Most notably because they both had what I call Friday of the Year candidates with Brian Valoria in the past couple of years. Particularly, I thought Segura was actually done after what Valoria did to him. But hey, I know he's shown life after coming back from that horrific fight with Valoria. And this fight was just unbelievable. It was just a war. Just they're punching. It's like Rock 'em Sock and Robots. They're just punching each other all around the ring. In the fourth round, Segura scores the first knockdown on Marquez in the fight. Marquez gets up, and they're just going at it. Just I don't think I barely saw them like take a step back or even breathe. And I think the story was, I mean, Marquez was getting the best of Segura winner in the middle of the ring, but Segura was actually bullying Marquez to the ropes and just absolutely like pounding away. And that led to a second knockdown. I believe it was either 10 or 11 of Marquez on the ropes, because he stayed on the ropes. And in the 12th round, it was a beautiful. I think it was an overhand left or a cross that knocked that Segura throw that knocked Marquez completely out. Um, and all I can do after watching this fight was just down probably my fourth beer and just be like, wow, this was something to do. This was a hell of a fight, and it was. Segura, continues on to on his comeback, and his comeback to hopefully become become champion again. And Marquez unfortunately was taken out on a stretcher, mostly as a precaution, and then to give him oxygen, and then he was taken out on a stretcher. And you hate to see fighters getting taken out on a stretcher, but I mean, it's boxing. That's what it is. Slugfest. You beat each other half to death. Your body can't take it. It's what happens. It's not the first time. It's not gonna be the last time I see it. A boxer gets taken out on a stretcher. So, well, those are my thoughts from from the fights from this weekend. Yep, I'm about to go find myself something to eat and indulge in my other passion, football. All right. Until next week. All right. Peace.